right. Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you guys for having me. So I'm going to be talking about the exciting world of combination products and the post-marketing safety reporting requirements for them. So we're just going to be covering the basis today, but with regards to combination products, I'm going to be giving an overview of the 2016 final rule for PMSR requirements for combination products, which is applicable to the combination product applicants and constituent part applicants. So first, what are combination products? Combination products are their own distinct type of medical product. They are a combination of two or more different product types. So this could be a drug and a device and a biologic, a drug and a biologic, or it could be all three. Some of the common examples are a pre-filled syringe, a drug-eluting stent, or a first aid kit that contains both devices and drugs. The drugs, devices, and biologic products that make up a combination product are called constituent parts. And each constituent part has its own mode of action. Combination products are assigned to a center who's responsible for the regulatory authorities associated with that product, and that includes Postmarket. And that center is called the lead center. The lead center is determined based on what's called the primary mode of action, or PMOA. The PMOA is the single mode of action of the combination product that provides the most important therapeutic effect to that product. So let's look at some examples. So first, we have a pre-filled vaccine syringe. So in this case, you have a vaccine, which is a biologic constituent part, and you have a syringe, which is a device constituent part. When thinking about the modes of action, you have the action of the vaccine, which is to provide protection to the patient. And then you have the action of the syringe, which is to deliver that vaccine to the patient. So in this case, the biologic or the vaccine is going to be the PMOA, and therefore, because the product would be regulated by, a vaccine would be regulated by CBER, the combination product would be assigned to CBER. A second example would be a drug auto-injector. And this is going to be really similar to the example we just talked about. You have the drug and you have the delivery device. The action of the drug is going to be the PMOA. And so if that drug were to be regulated by CDER, the combination product would be assigned to CDER. And then my third example is a drug-eluting stent. In this case, you have a stent, or a device constituent part, and its mode of action is to hold open an artery. And that stent may have a drug coating on it, and that coating may be an anticoagulant to prevent blood clots. And so in this case, the action of the device, which holding open the artery, is going to be the primary mode of action. And so this combination product would be assigned to CDRH. There's three types of combination products. Now, those products I was just mentioning on the last slide are called single entity combination products. They're physically or chemically combined. Think of them very hard to separate. But another type of combination product is called co-packaged. So an example of this would be if you have an empty syringe that is packaged together with a vial of a drug. Another example would be a first aid kit that contains individual drugs and individual devices. And the last type of combination product are called cross-labeled. They're less common, and these are when they're individual products that are packaged separately, but they are labeled and intended to be used specifically with one another in order to achieve their intended therapeutic effect. An example of this would be a light-emitting device that is intended to be used with a specific light-activated drug. So now let's talk about post-marketing safety reporting requirements for combination products. In general, when thinking about the PMSR requirements for a combination product, the requirements are going to come down to whether you are a combination product applicant or a constituent part type applicant. And I'm going to explain the difference between those. So first, and most commonly, you have a combination product applicant. These are going to be applicants who have the only or all applications for the combination product. So those single entity examples I mentioned, like a pre-filled syringe, if you have that product, you're going to be a combination product applicant. And as a combination product applicant, you have responsibilities for application type-based reporting requirements and constituent part-based reporting requirements. And we'll talk about those in a moment. But first, the second type of applicant are constituent part applicants. These are most commonly going to be in the situations of cross-labeled combination products. So this is when you have one application for one constituent part of the combination product, and there's a second applicant with a second application for the other constituent part of the combination product. Constituent part applicants are only responsible for the application type-based reporting requirements. So let's talk about what those requirements are. So application-based reporting requirements, which is along the top row here or orange on my slide, those are going to be your typical requirements based on the application type that the combination product received marketing authorization under. They're not listed on this slide because applicants should typically know what they are, but they are outlined in 21 CFR 314 for NDAs and ANDAs, 21 CFR 600 and 606 for BLAs, and 21 CFR 803 and 806 for devices. Now, moving along to constituent part-based reporting requirements. This is based on the constituent parts that make up your combination product. So thinking about the first column here, if you have an NDA and that NDA includes a device constituent part, you have additional reporting requirements on top of those that come along with the application type. In this case, you would be responsible for 5-day remedial action reports, malfunction reports, and correction or removal reports and records. And while I don't have time today to dive deeply into what each of those are, I do have a resource slide to help point you to where to go to so you can learn more information about them. But I do want to go through an example. So let's say you're a combination product applicant and you have a product that is a co-packaged drug and infusion set, and it's marketed under an NDA. If you determine that a 15-day report is required after a serious, unexpected adverse event that was related to overinfusion of the drug occurred, but you then determine that the infusion set could have caused or contributed to that event, then you also are responsible for submitting a malfunction report. There may be instances when you have to submit a malfunction report and not a 15-day report. An example of that might be a co-packaged combination product in which you have a syringe that the sterile barrier was compromised. If the healthcare professional discarded that syringe before using it, there was no adverse event. However, had that malfunction occurred and the compromised sterile barrier would have been likely to cause or contribute to death or serious injury, then a malfunction report would be required. The other columns in this table are similar in format. So the middle one, if you have a BLA or a device application, and it includes a drug constituent part, then you also must submit field alert reports or FAERS and 15-day reports. And last, if you have an NDA or a device application, and that includes a biological product constituent part, then you're also responsible for biologic product deviation reports or BPDRs and 15-day reports. So where should you be submitting these? So individual case safety reports or ICSRs is the term that's used to include 15-day reports, 5-day reports, malfunction reports, and reports of death or serious injuries. And applicants must submit ICSRs in accordance with the procedural requirements in the regulations associated with the application type of the combination product, and they should follow the policies and the procedures of the lead center. For reports other than ICSRs, so that includes FAERS, BPDRs, and correction or removal reports, you would submit those reports in accordance to the procedural requirements and policies associated with the report type. A combination product applicant may submit a single report to comply with more than one reporting requirement if the reports can be submitted in the same manner and the combined report satisfies all applicable reporting requirements, including all of the submission timelines. So for example, if you are a combination product applicant with a CDER-led NDA for a drug device combination product, and you have to submit a 15-day report and a malfunction report, then that applicant can satisfy both of these reporting requirements in a single report that's submitted within 15 days, and that report would be submitted to FAERS. So PMSR reports for combination products must contain all of the information required for the report type under the applicable regulations. And this includes relevant information on the entire product, including each constituent part, regardless of whether it was implicated in the event. So if you have an event that you have to report a 15-day report, and it appears that there's no relation to the device constituent part, you should still include information about that device constituent part when reporting it to the FDA, even if it was not implicated in it. And this slide includes some of the examples of the fields in which you can include this information in each of the reporting systems. So on the left, FAERS, the drug and non-vaccine biologic adverse event reporting system, there are device constituent part fields. So you can indicate what the device brand name was, its common name, its pro code, and even more. And then on the flip side, in CDRH's EMDR system, which is for device adverse event reports, there are fields in which you can include information about the drug or biologic. So I only had time today to go over a very high level, overview of this. So I'm leaving you with many resources. And I really want to draw your attention to bullet 4, which is our guidance for industry. This is a fantastic resource. It goes into so many more details than I could cover today, but it also has a lot of really great examples to help you think through your products and how these regulations would apply to you. So what do I hope for you to take away today? First, do you have a combination product? And if you do, what are the different constituent parts and what is the lead center for that product? And then second, what are the PMSR requirements that apply to your product and where should those reports be submitted? And lastly, what constituent part information should you be including in the reports for your product? So is there a device in your combination product? Please do include information about the device. And if you still have questions, we're here to help. You can contact the Office of Combination Products at combination@fda.gov. You should also reach out to your lead center if you know them. If you don't, we will help connect you to the right people to answer your questions. Thank you for the time today. And I want to welcome my colleague Saranjan to talk more about FAERS updates.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Saranjan Dey. I'm the Deputy Director of Regulatory Science Staff in Office of Surveillance and Epidemiology in CDER in US FDA. So today's talk will be about updates on FAERS. So what do we, what are we going to talk about? We'll recognize that FDA will require reporting of pre-market and post-market safety reports in the ICH E2B R3 format to FAERS. We communicate the implementation status, timelines, and readiness. And FAERS case processing and analytical modules now accommodates product quality, defect, and complaint reports. So we have made one system for both adverse event and product quality. All right, so FDA is in the process of implementing electronic submission for both post-market and pre-market safety reports using ICH E2B R3 standards. There'll be separate submission path and business rules for pre-market and post-market safety reports. We have all the technical specification documents that have been posted on the FAERS electronic submission page. And all communication will be done via the FAERS electronic submission page on fda.gov. And the link is at the bottom of the FAERS electronic submission page. So the way we are implementing this, and partly also has been implemented, is we're going to have two separate submission paths, one for pre-market side and one for post-market side. And the reason being that we all know that post-market report eventually gets into the public dashboard, versus pre-market report will not get into the FAERS public dashboard. So it will not be publicly published. So we have two separate paths, which means if you're submitting through the gateway, you have two separate headers. Now we also have two separate headers in the pre-market side for CEDAR and CBER. And the reason being that we did find that there are some IND numbers which overlap between the two centers. So as a result, we made sure they are separated out. And then once you separate it out in CEDAR and CBER, we also know, that it is for an IND or for a post-market, and the post-market headers are just shown on the screen here. And this is basically a very important table to keep in mind, that if you're submitting electronically using the E2B standards, then for the IND safety reports, you have the AS2 header, you have the routing ID, but within the XML, it also identifies with the N14 saying that it's a pre-market report, and N2R3 says within pre-market it's a CEDAR IND. And similarly for the other three values that you have, of which the third value is for pre-market report, but then they are the IND exempt bioavailability and bioequivalent study safety reports. And finally, you have the post-market safety reports. The values of this are basically the same as we did in R2 for AS2 header and routing IDs. So now what you have is you have two options to submit these reports. As we know, post-market safety reports are mandated to be submitted electronically. So these are the two options. When it comes to pre-market report, this will be the two options. Of course, the day we publish to say that we are ready for pre-market, from that point, you'll have 2 years to comply to the submitting of electronically. So option A is database to database submission, which is again the E2B standard. The sponsors submit through the gateway, they get the first acknowledgement, FAERS processes it, and they get a second acknowledgement which says is it successful or not successful. Option number B, where most of the companies who use option number B who have less volume reports, because you have to submit these reports one at a time, it's a web form, and you submit this report through a safety reporting portal where you have to register first, and then you submit those reports, which then gets into FAERS. So safety reporting portal intended for sponsors, and also we have seen a lot of CROs who use that, who do not have an infrastructure for the gateway. And these are individual reports only, no batch reporting can be done. One report at a time, can be used for both commercial and research INDs. And right now it's not available for vaccine reporting. If you're a CRO, you need to have separate accounts for your separate customers or license holders. Post-marketing report and pre-market report, they will be upfront. It will ask you in the safety reporting portal that are you submitting for a pre-market or a post-market. It's an online form. If you have any document where you have like a narrative written, I mean, the narrative has to go as typed in narrative in the narrative section of safety reporting portal. We have seen some companies, they would say, see attachment. Yes, you can add attachment to the safety reporting portal, but it doesn't help us with all the AI work that we are trying to do. All right, this is free of cost. And if you are only submitting using the as a post-market reporting, you really don't have to do any actions. But if you are going to be submitting pre-market report, then of course you have to register those INDs for which you're going to be submitting, so that when you go on the online form, it will automatically give you the IND numbers for which you are submitting the report for. And any questions, faersesub@fda.hhs.gov. This is the email address where you can ask all your questions. There are some documentation which are available, which are important. So this is the technical specification document, the regional core data elements. This is, if you're submitting E2B, this is a very important document. It lists all the ICH and the regional data elements, all the attributes, the conformance, business rules, and expats and acknowledgement attributes. This is a forward compatibility rule. If you have submitting a pre-market report, then you don't have to worry about this, because pre-market report comes through ECTD as PDF. So we'd never had E2B R2. But for post-market, yes, you need to look at this document to move from R2 to R3, especially for the, this is for the regional elements. And then finally, we have given some sample XML files, which has different variety of both post-market, pre-market, combination products. And it gives you some sample instances to show you how the XML will look like. So going into IND safety reports, this is an important thing that FDA is working towards, and the process that we are trying to do is to get these gets a submission electronically. We know we all submit ECTD, but now that we will be submitting electronically, so through the XML or through the safety reporting portal. What types of reports for IND to be submitted? The first top three, based on 21 CFR 213, 32A, B, and C. So those are the types of reports that will be submitted through FAERS. Remaining reports will continue to be submitted through ECTD. How will it help sponsors? So first thing, you know, no need to submit the 1571 or cover letter for the IND safety reports. No separate submission for cross-reported IND. The structure now accommodates the cross-reported IND, so there'll be only one report that needs to be submitted. You get immediate acknowledgement of an ICSR, and some additional benefit is you're submitting directly from your safety database, and I believe most of the companies have to submit through this regulatory affairs. If they submit through ECTD, that also is eliminated. Then you have IND exempt. So a little bit of IND exempt. We have, currently they don't have an electronic rule, so they will be submitted as 3500A MedWatch form to this email address. We also encourage that the systems also will be ready with E2B and safety reporting portal, so you can utilize that to submit. So to prepare your IT systems, you can prepare your IT systems with the E2B R2, or you can go directly to safety reporting portal where you just have to get an account. And then any questions, anything that you may have, you would ask your questions to faersesub@fda.hhs.gov. But if you don't have an account in SRP, you will ask for an account. If you don't have an account in ESG, you will first have to get that account and do all your testing before you submit. For IND exempt, you also have to request through the NextGen portal for a pre-ANDA number, which eventually will become your ANDA. So that number is also important to identify that, say, IND exempt BABE safety report. Where are we with our plans? So we have published all the regional specs. Our tools have been enhanced. The gateways has been set up from our side. System testing has been done. We did some industry testing with getting some of those IND safety reports and the post-market safety reports, all in E2B R3 format. And with public communication, as we move through, we have actually implemented and published to say that on January 16th, I believe, that we went live with the post-market safety report in E2B R3 format, so that from that point you have 2 years to move from E2B R2 to R3. But if you are safety reporting portal, you're using safety reporting portal, you can continue to do that. And so this is what was done. So right now we have not still published anything about IND safety reports. So that's why I continued your ECTD format submission. Now, once you have created your E2B R3, and if you're using the gateway, how do you test your XML? So we have FDA also is giving a validator, and it's already published, where you can upload your file. And click on validate. It will tell you the messages, error messages that you may have. You should go back, fix them. And once you don't have any messages, that means you have fixed your systems and you are ready to submit through the gateway now. What changes you may notice once we all start submitting through the E2B R3 format? So now you submit through ECTD, goes to the gateway, regulatory submission database, and then finally we take that and put it into FAERS. Moving forward, if you use the E2B XML or you use the safety reporting portal, they all will directly go into FAERS, and none of these processes, the ones in excess, will go away. And now I'm only talking about the safety reports here. So once we start year 0, which when we go live, and then from that point you have 2 years for mandatory ICSR submission via ESG or the safety reporting portal. So here is a proposed timeline that we have. So January 2024, we did post-market, we went live. This is another thing which happened after this happened very recently, where FAERS is now becoming a more enterprise system. It can capture now cosmetic safety reports. Excuse me. So now the voluntary period has started for E2B R3. Sometime in March, most likely looks like it probably will be first week of April, that we're anticipating the final guidance and the FR notice will come out for for IND safety reports. Which we have E2B R3 format, and for that you will reference all the updates will be provided on the FAERS electronic submission page. Now once that goes, then you have 2 years to start working to move through from ECTD to E2B R3, and then once you have moved, you cannot revert back to legacy methods. And finally, probably March 2026 is when companies will now have to comply with submitting pre-market and post-market ICSIs in electronic format or through SRP. All right, so FDA's approach in harmonizing, so we have harmonized the safety and quality databases. This is a big accomplishment in FDA, and that has enhanced our review. Now 2 different offices actually see 1 report, and the follow-ups that come, they also see 1 report. And the analytics module also has been updated. So the analytics module, everybody sees the same report. And so by maintaining the integrity of new data and critical legacy determination, we have really done a good job in putting all the systems together. Some of the references, these are all the documents that we have are references. And in summary, we recognized our submitting safety reports electronically, understand the submission methods and mechanism of different types of reports. We communicated the implementation status, timelines, and readiness, and then finally acknowledge FDA's approach to harmonize safety and quality. So with that, I finish my presentation, and I would like to, and closing thoughts, soon accept pre-market safety reports electronically. And with that, I invite Claire to give her presentation. Thank you.
Okay, hello everybody again. I'm going to be taking you through some MHRA updates. So for those of you who couldn't join yesterday, Steve Winter gave an update on the compliance team strategy. So if anybody did miss that, I encourage you to go back and have a look at that, because that was a really good presentation on some of the updates that the MHRA are making within the compliance teams and the direction that we're traveling in. But today I'm going to talk you through a bit about regulatory updates in pharmacovigilance. And in order to do that, I want to give you a bit of history in our regulation and the basis of where that's come from. So for anybody who thought they were going to have an easy last session, apologies, I'm going to bamboozle you with EU and UK legislation. Once I finish that, I'm going to move on to our inspection programme. We've had a bit of a transition in the MHRA, so I want to talk you through some of our organisational charts and just show you where we fit as a PV inspectorate. And I'll talk you through our inspection programme, and then we'll have a bit of a future look at the end to finish. So just to start with, and so we're all on the same page, I wanted to talk to you about some of the major changes to PV requirements in the EU. And the UK was part of the EU for a long time, and therefore our pharmacovigilance legislation is entrenched within EU legislation. And some of the major updates that happened the biggest one being in 2012, came to by the update of Directive 2001/83 EC, and this brought with it the implementation of the GPVP modules. So they are a suite of modules that really go into a lot of detail about how pharmacovigilance should be implemented within the EU. Another update came in 2007, and that brought with it the addition of vigilance. Now, this is a centralised repository where all ICSRs that are required to be reported in the European Union are reported to that one centralised repository rather than being individually reported to EU member states. Then in 2020, the UK voted to leave the European Union, and that transition period ended on the 31st of December 2020. So from the 1st of January 2020, the MHRA became UK standalone regulator of medicines and medicinal devices. And Great Britain, which is made up of England, Scotland and Wales, now operates a legal framework that incorporates EU legislation into the UK law. And MHRA takes the sovereign decisions for medicines authorised in respect to Great Britain. Now, what's important to understand is that the UK is made up of those countries within Great Britain plus Northern Ireland, which makes up the UK as a fourth country. And Northern Ireland and products that are authorised in Northern Ireland are still required to be under EU decisions and under PV requirements, and that's under the Northern Ireland Protocol where that's specified. And that was implemented to prevent a hard border between Northern Ireland, which is in the UK, and the Republic of Ireland, which is part of the EU. So this is where it gets a bit complicated. So I'm going to talk you through some of the ways that products are authorised within the UK. So we have, despite leaving the European Union, a number of products that are authorised in Northern Ireland are still centrally authorised by the European Union. So these are innovative products. And under Regulation 726/2004, they have to be authorised under what we call the centrally authorised procedure. Now, that means that one application is submitted within the EU, and then if that application is granted, then the authorisation immediately becomes effective throughout the European Union, and that includes Northern Ireland still under the Northern Ireland Protocol. Now, we also have products that are authorised nationally by the MHRA. Some of those products are authorised in respect to Great Britain only. As I said, that's England, Wales and Scotland. All UK nationally authorised products are under the Human Medicines Regulation, and pharmacovigilance sits within Part 11 of that. Now, if they're authorised in respect to Great Britain, they are authorised under Schedule 12A of the Human Medicines Regulation. If they are authorised in respect to Northern Ireland, so these could be products that are just authorised in Northern Ireland, but they could also be authorised UK-wide, then they are granted by the MHRA, but they would be under the Commission implementing regulation. And they are those products that aren't the innovative products. So that's very complicated, I know. I have to deal with it every day. So what was the good news is, and this is what I wanted to mention, that the Commission implementing regulation and Schedule 12A actually mirror each other. We designed, when we left the European Union, when we drafted Schedule 12A, we ensured that it mirrored the Commission implementing regulation. So although there are these differences in practical terms, the pharmacovigilance that needs to be carried out under both sets of legislation are the same. So that's the good news. So I mentioned the good pharmacovigilance practices modules earlier. As I said, these were developed in 2012 under Article 108 of the Directive 2001/83/EC, and these are stipulated within that directive, and that makes them statutory guidance, and therefore any market authorisation holder within the EU must comply with that guidance. They are a set of modules that are set up that discuss all elements of pharmacovigilance, from collection and collation of adverse events, reporting of those adverse events, through to signal detection, PSURs, the quality management systems that you need to support your pharmacovigilance system. And they not only apply to market authorisation holders, but also to each of the regulatory authorities in the European Union as well, and EU member states. So when we left the European Union, what we did was we decided that we would adopt these into our legislation. And so we are still using the good pharmacovigilance practice modules. And to depict where there are differences between what needs to happen in the UK for pharmacovigilance and in the EU, we designed the exceptions and modifications document, and that is published on our website. And it's designed to be used in conjunction with the GVP module. So you need to read the GVP modules with the exception modifications document, and that will tell you where the differences lie between what's needed for EU products and what's needed for those authorised in the UK. So that's not the end of the story, though. There are more updates to come with the introduction of the Windsor framework. And this is a new legal agreement which has been drawn up, which adjusts the operation of the Northern Ireland Protocol. And the aim is to address the political concerns in the UK, as there's been difficulties around the movement of goods from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. And so where a lot of the focus on the Windsor framework is about the movement of goods and includes the labelling and packaging of medicinal products within the UK, there are some impacts also to the authorisation of medicinal products. And what the Windsor framework will mean is that the UK becomes will authorise all products within the UK. So where I was talking about, there are that subset of innovative products that are authorised by the EU under the centrally authorised procedure. That will no longer happen. They will all be authorised by the MHRA, and therefore they will sit under the Human Medicines Regulation, Part 11 for pharmacovigilance, and then under Schedule 12A of the Human Medicines Regulation. So where that should make things more simple, that we are the sovereign regulator, we are authorising all products, there will still be those non-innovative products that sit outside of the Windsor framework, which although we will authorise, they will be under the Commission implementing regulation still. So unfortunately, it doesn't make things as simple as we would all like, but it is a step towards that. So that's all the complicated bit done. I can take a breath. I'm going to move on to something that's a lot more easy to explain now. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our inspection programme and where we are. So we inspect under the Human Medicines Regulation, Regulation 327. And this here explains a little bit of our corporate structure. We sit under the Healthcare and Access Division and in Standards and Compliance. We have two compliance teams. and that contains all of our GXP inspectors. So Compliance Team 2 is our Good Manufacturing Practice Inspectors and our Good Distribution Practice Inspectors. And then we have Compliance Team 1, which is headed up by Steve Winter, who spoke earlier, who opened the Pharmacovigilance Symposium this afternoon. And that compliance team consists of our good clinical practice inspectors, good laboratory inspectors, and then our PV inspectors as well. So we have 6 PV inspectors, or we should do when we're at full remit, and then the head of PV is Sophie Radiker. So you'll notice that we have 2 vacancies at the moment, which we should be filling by mid this year. And then I sit just outside of this in the expert circle, so we have an expert for each of the GXPs as well. So moving on to our inspection program, we in the pharmacovigilance team, we operate a risk-based inspection program. That means we don't inspect on a cyclical basis. We choose who to go to and where we go, and the timeliness of how often we go by risk. So we use a number of factors. We look at things such as the product. Is it a product that's on the additional monitoring list? They're the newer innovative products that we're looking at. Is it a product that we know has associated risks with it? Does it have additional risk minimisation measures, for instance? We'll look at the MAH or the applicant themselves to look at, do we have any intelligence? Is there something that's leading us to believe we should go and inspect that entity? And then we'll look at the PV system. How many products does that PV system have under it? Has there been significant changes to that PV system, any mergers or acquisitions or updates to that PV system that we know about? And then we'll use our compliance history as well. What do we know about the compliance history of that organisation? Have there been significant critical findings in the past? Have we received any intelligence from any of our international collaborative partners regarding that? And there's 4 different inspection arms which we can inspect under. So the main bulk of our inspections are conducted under our routine pharmacovigilance activities inspection arm. And this includes the main elements of pharmacovigilance. So everything from collection and collation of safety data, reporting of adverse drug reactions, signal detection, writing and authoring the submission of PBRAs and PSURs, the quality management system, and all of that comes under that bracket. We then have our routine management, risk management and safety communication inspection arm, and this is looking at all of those risk management, routine risk management that has to be mandated as part of having a licence within the UK. So here I'm talking about summary of product characteristics, which is equivalent to the US PI, and the patient information leaflets in packs. And we'll look at, are those documents up to date with the latest scientific knowledge, and have they been implemented within the timelines that are required? Then we look at the additional risk minimisation measures inspection arm. These are for a subset of products where the benefit risk profile is deemed to be a little bit more unfavourable, and there needs to be some risk minimisation put in place to ensure the safety of that product. And we will conduct those on a product-specific basis. It may be that our assessors within our safety and surveillance team have asked us to conduct inspections, and they can be pre-launch inspections or post-launch, and we'll conduct a specific inspection just looking at that particular additional risk minimisation measure. And they're usually reserved for the more complex additional risk minimisation measures, such as pregnancy prevention programmes, controlled access and controlled distribution. And then finally, we have our non-interventional post-authorization safety studies, and they're looking, again, they are very specific. They might be specific to a product or certain studies that we'll choose. They're usually the mandated studies, so category 1 or 2 PAS. And we come into the MAH, we'll all look at, from a sponsor from the MAH perspective, and then we'll also choose a couple of sites to go on to the investigator to have a look at how AE data is being collected. So they're a little bit of a different type of inspection, and for companies, they're a new way of being inspected by the MHRA because it means a collaboration between not just the pharmacovigilance departments, but the clinical teams as well. And then very briefly, we're going to have a future look and look at regulatory updates. So some of these have already come into effect. So the international recognition procedure, this came into effect on the 1st of January 2024. And this is a process in which the MHRA is recognising market authorisations that have been approved in other regulators, and there's certain regulators that are on the list where this will be recognised. There's two ways that market authorisation applicants can put in their applications, dependent on how long that market authorisation has been approved, for instance, the type of product that it is, whether there's any additional risk minimisation measures associated with that product. And it means that it should be a swifter process for approval within the UK and less burden on our assessors. The early access to medicines scheme, this is something that we laid a statutory instrument for this in 2022. But the reason I want to mention it today is because we're starting to implement some guidance on this, and hopefully that will be published this year. And this is where there has been identified an unmet need for a medicine that is used in a life-threatening disease, and that the company can submit an early access to medicine scheme application, and that means that the MHRA assessors will give a scientific opinion on whether that can be used in the UK, and if so, that scientific opinion will last a year. And as I said, we're implementing some guidelines which hopefully will come out to support that this year. Point of care, this is the introduction of a new innovative regulatory framework. This is looking at manufacturing techniques. So traditionally, products are manufactured in a centralised basis, but with more and more innovative medicines, this is becoming more decentralised to the point where some medicines need to be manufactured at the point of care, at the patient bedside. And this regulatory framework will help to support those medicines, and will be an update to some of the pharmacovigilance requirements around those as well. And then lastly, the Windsor framework, this will be implemented on the 1st of January 2025. I'm not saying very much about this now, and I can hear all those QPPVs in the UK shouting at me for not saying more, but we will be saying more at our own symposium, and this is a shameless plug for that. It's on the 28th of February 2024, in a couple of weeks, in Hammersmith. So please do come along to that, or log into the webinar where you can hear more on the Windsor framework. So just to summarise very quickly, because I've gone over time, the current UK PV requirements are changing with the Windsor framework. We are getting back up to speed with the number of inspectors that we have with our inspectorate, which is great news for us, bad news for all of you because you'll see us more regularly. We operate a risk-based inspection model, so for some of you who don't come out at the top of the inspection model, we may never come to inspect. For others of you who hit a lot of those risk criteria, we'll be seeing you more often. And look out for legislative updates. We do put those on our websites. We are going to be updating our guidance shortly to incorporate the Windsor framework. So please do look there. We also publish our inspection metrics. We have our inspectorate blog where you can find out information, and we try to keep that as up to date as possible. And one last plug, we have our symposium on the 28th of February in Hammersmith, and you can join online. So thank you very much.